Today we're opening up this really incredible firsthand account you sent us. It's a story from a guy named Vincent who runs an electrical rewinding business.
Right, which sounds incredibly niche right off the bat.
It is. And, our mission today isn't just to walk you through some old story about a broken piece of machinery. We're dissecting the source material to understand the exact moment that, well, human empathy just completely overrides professional boundaries.
Oh, absolutely. And how extreme limitation actually fuels this kind of genius-level problem solving.
Exactly. It's this fascinating look at what happens when the perfect tools are completely stripped away from you.
And the setting alone creates this immediate sense of tension, right from the start.
Yeah, paint the picture for us.
So it's 9:30 p.m. on a late evening. Vincent is in his workshop, and he is literally about to turn off the lights and close up for the night.
Like keys in hand, ready to go home.
Exactly. When suddenly, an old man, he's in his 70s, pulls up in a Jeep carrying this custom-made 2-foot-long iron shaft.
Which is heavy, just lugging this thing in.
Yeah, and to give you a sense of how totally mismatched this encounter is, we need to look at what Vincent actually does for a living.
Right, because an electrical rewinding shop is highly, highly specialized. If you walk into one, you're going to see, fine copper wire, spools, stators, insulation varnish.
Very delicate stuff.
Super delicate. It's a place dedicated to bringing burnt-out electric motors back to life. It is absolutely not a general metalworking machine shop.
Not even close.
Imagine you're an IT professional, you're packing up your laptop, and someone just bursts into your office asking you to perform emergency plumbing.
That's such a good analogy.
Right, sure, you both use tools, but the precision, the mindset, the raw materials, they're just worlds apart.
And that mismatch, it's the foundation of the entire conflict here. What's fascinating here is that this isn't just a mechanical story.
It's really not.
It's this high-stakes psychological drama about what happens when industrial logistics completely break down just because of a single forgotten detail.
Let's talk about that detail, because this old man walks into this delicate electrical shop lugging this massive chunk of industrial machinery.
Yeah, and he points to a slot milled into the side of the shaft and tells Vincent he needs a suitable, quote, key.
Right. And for those of you listening who might not, spend your weekends taking apart heavy machinery.
Which is probably most of us.
Fair point. But a key in this mechanical context is this tiny, precisely shaped piece of metal. It sits inside a slot on a shaft, and it locks a gear or a pulley into place.
It's vital.
Exactly. Without that tiny piece of metal, the shaft will just spin uselessly inside the gear. The machine does absolutely nothing.
The whole thing is dead in the water.
Completely. And the pressure on this 70-year-old man, you can just feel it dripping off the tech.
Oh, it is palpable.
Yeah.
He openly admits to Vincent that he made a massive logistical error.
He practically yells it, right?
Yeah, it's in all caps in the original text. He says, yeah, I made a mistake I forgot to ask. He had this custom 2-foot shaft fabricated at a completely different workshop earlier in the day, probably miles and miles away.
And he just forgot.
He simply forgot to ask the original machinist to actually make the key that goes with it.
It's just such a human error. We've all done something like that.
Exactly. But by the time he realized his mistake, that original workshop had locked its doors for the night.
So the stakes here are astronomically high. He tells Vincent he has to reach his factory that night, install this new shaft into a machine, and start production by tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning. That is zero turnaround time.
None. We're talking about an entire assembly line, a waiting workforce, and likely, thousands of dollars of output entirely dependent on this one machine being operational at dawn.
If you've ever dealt with supply chain management, you know the catastrophic ripple effect of a single bottleneck like this.
Oh, yeah. And the text explicitly outlines the unimaginable backup plan if he fails to get this key tonight.
The unimaginable alternative.
Right. Because he's from a neighboring district, he'd have to find a local lodge.
Sleep in a strange bed.
Yeah, wake up the next morning, wait for the industrial machine shops to open, buy a new key, and then drive all the way back to his factory.
And that delay is described in the text as unimaginable for him.
You can just feel the weight of a whole factory's downtime sitting right on his shoulders.
Heavy stuff. So Vincent looks at the shaft, he looks at the old man, and he just points out the obvious reality of the situation.
He tells him the truth.
Right. He explains, look, I'm in the electrical rewinding business. I have absolutely nothing to do with mechanical keys or raw metal fabrication.
He repeats his helplessness.
And the old man, who is obviously deeply disappointed, he actually accepts the logic. He turns around to leave the shop.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because this is where I find myself deeply fascinated by Vincent's reaction.
How so?
Rationally, Vincent is completely in the right here, like 100% justified in letting the man walk away.
Oh, absolutely.
It's late, he's tired, this isn't his field of expertise, and he doesn't have the specialized machinery. Most of us in that situation would just, offer a sympathetic nod, lock the door, and go home to watch TV.
Yeah, not my circus, not my monkeys.
Exactly. So why does Vincent second-guess his own perfectly valid boundaries?
Well, if we look at the text, the catalyst here is profoundly human, and it totally defies industrial logic. It's guilt.
Guilt. Just plain guilt.
Yeah. As Vincent watches this 70-year-old man walking back toward his vehicle, carrying this heavy, totally useless metal shaft.
Sinking into the reality of his own failure.
Right. Vincent experiences this profound empathetic response. He feels a wave of guilt that he couldn't help a fellow human being in distress.
He's not crunching the numbers or checking his inventory.
No, he's not mathematically calculating if he has the right gauge of steel in his scrap bin. He's reacting entirely to the despair of the man in front of him.
And that flash of guilt forces him to act almost on instinct. He calls out to the old man, just stops him in his tracks.
And the old man is astonished.
Totally shocked. He turns around and asks, "Do you think you have one?" And Vincent simply replies, "Yes."
The transition in that single word is striking. He moves instantly from, "I cannot help you," to a definitive yes.
It sets off this immediate chain reaction. The old man's driver, a young guy who is waiting out in the Jeep, follows the old man back inside.
Right.
And he takes this heavy 2-foot shaft and places it squarely on Vincent's work table. And I gotta say, the internal monologue Vincent shares in the source text at this exact moment is absolutely fascinating.
Oh, I love this part.
He notes to himself, quote, "Placed on Vincent's table means work done."
That single sentence reveals a massive psychological shift.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. Vincent goes from, "I can't help you," to a level of supreme, almost arrogant confidence in a matter of seconds.
But while
Placed on my table means work done. He hasn't even measured the slot yet. He doesn't know what size key he needs. He doesn't know what scrap metal he has lying around. How does someone make that kind of intellectual leap from zero to absolute certainty without even assessing the physical problem first?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we're looking at a masterclass in the psychology of extreme ownership.
Extreme ownership. Tell me more about that.
When Vincent allowed his empathy to override his professional boundaries, he made a psychological commitment that fundamentally changed how his brain processed the situation. He didn't just invite the man back inside. He mentally assumed the total burden of the old man's problem.
So it's his problem now.
Exactly. That internal statement isn't arrogance. It's the manifestation of absolute commitment. He's essentially programming his own mind, telling himself that failure is no longer an option on the table.
So the outcome is guaranteed in his mind, even if the actual mechanical process to get there is still a complete mystery.
Yes. When you fully commit to a result like that, your cognitive function actually changes. Your brain stops looking for exit routes.
It stops making excuses about lacking the proper tools.
Right. And it completely pivots toward lateral problem solving.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the specialized equipment, but his mind is already working backward from the assumption of success.
Which perfectly transitions us to the harsh, gritty, physical reality of what happens next.
Because psychological commitment is great, but
it doesn't spontaneously generate precision machinery out of thin air.
no, it does not.
And precision is exactly what the situation demands. We are talking about the need for analog ingenuity in a deeply rigid digital world.
The physical constraints Vincent is operating under are incredibly tight here.
So Vincent steps up to the table to examine the key slot on the iron shaft. And the source text specifically points out that he has no digital vernier and no caliper.
Which is a huge problem.
For those listening who might not work in manufacturing, calipers are these highly precise measuring tools with little metal jaws.
They measure down to the 100th of a millimeter.
Right. When you're machining parts that have to slide into a slot and lock tight without vibrating loose at 1,000 revolutions per minute, you usually need digital calipers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because a loose key will cause the shaft to vibrate, which will literally tear the machine apart.
And Vincent has none of that. He just has his eyeballs.
The contrast between what the old man expected when he started his day and what is actually happening in this shop right now is immense.
It's comical almost.
The old man expected a standard transaction. Go to a machinist, hand over money, receive a standardized, pre-manufactured product.
Instead, what he's witnessing is raw, improvised fabrication.
Right before his eyes.
So the old man is watching this unfold in real time. Vincent picks up a flat piece of scrap metal he just happens to have lying around.
Just scrap.
And the old man's astonishment doubles. He practically shouts, quote, "You are making one."
He can't believe it.
But Vincent calmly confirms. He takes this random piece of flat metal, locks it into his heavy bench vise, grabs a hand file, and starts aggressively filing the corner to match the shape of the bottom of the slot.
Just shaping it by hand.
Yeah. And then he takes a fret saw, which, by the way, is a small hand saw usually reserved for delicate woodworking, and he just cuts the corner off the metal.
I mean, the sheer physical difficulty of executing that with hand tools cannot be overstated.
Well, the text gives us a tiny, crucial detail here that completely reframes the scale of what we're talking about.
What's that?
The resulting piece of metal, this half-round chunk he just sawed off, is roughly half the size of an aspirin tablet.
Oh, wow. Half an aspirin. In the context of metalworking, especially without precision holding tools, that is microscopic.
It really is. Think about trying to hold half an aspirin tablet steady while you aggressively drag a heavy grooved metal hand file across it.
It's an absolute recipe for disaster.
You can't hold it in your fingers. The friction and heat of the file will shred your skin.
You'd be bleeding everywhere.
Exactly. And if you try to put a piece of metal that small into a giant industrial bench vise, the heavy iron jaws will either crush the piece entirely or it'll just slip right through the gap the moment you apply lateral pressure with the file. How do you even manipulate something that small?
The tension peaks right here, honestly, because the margin for error on something aspirin-sized is practically zero.
Zero.
If he files away 1/fraction of a millimeter too much, the key is useless. It'll just rattle around.
And if he leaves it a fraction of a millimeter too thick, it simply won't slide into the slot on the shaft.
And that is precisely the wall they hit.
Yeah, we reach the climax of the narrative here. Vincent takes his newly minted tiny metal key and he tries to slide it into the slot on the iron shaft. It's slightly too thick. It will not go in.
Oh, man. It's the realization of the old man's worst fear.
The old man completely breaks down. He falls back into despair. The text says he just mutters, "Oh no."
You can hear the exhaustion in that.
The late hour, the defeat, all wrapped up in those two words. He clearly believes they've hit a dead end, that Vincent's confidence was just misplaced.
But Vincent remains calm.
Cool as a cucumber. He calms the older man down, and then he executes one of the most brilliant, improvised engineering workarounds you could possibly ask for.
It's a stroke of genius born entirely from the limitations of his workspace.
Let me break it down. Vincent looks around. He knows he can't hold the metal in his fingers to file it down further. He knows the heavy vise won't grip it.
Right.
So he picks up a piece of soft wood. He places the tiny metal key onto the wood, takes a hammer, and gives it a slight tap.
I see where this is going.
He embeds the hard metal key into the soft wood just enough so that it is locked firmly in place, but the specific portion that needs to be filed remains emerged above the surface of the wood.
He essentially forces the wood to swallow the bottom half of the metal. He's creating a custom mold on the fly.
Yes. So, what does this all mean? Vincent essentially invented a custom disposable jig out of scrap wood in a matter of seconds.
It's brilliant.
He used a softer material to trap a tiny hard material so he could apply force. That is pure genius. He takes that piece of wood, which is large enough to easily handle now, and he locks the wood securely into the heavy iron bench vise.
Now he's got leverage.
Now he has a steady, secure surface. He takes his file and goes to work on the exposed top portion of the metal key, bringing it down to the exact required thickness.
Incredible.
He pops the key out of the wood, slides it into the iron shaft slot, and the text says, quote, "Perfect fitting."
Wow. You know, this raises an important question from a cognitive perspective. It reveals so much about how our brains function when we aren't given the easy way out.
Limitations breed creativity.
Exactly. In our modern, highly specialized world, we are so conditioned to believe that every specific problem requires a specific pre-manufactured tool.
Oh, totally. If you don't have the microvise, you assume you cannot hold the micropart. End of story.
But Vincent's lack of specialized equipment forced a totally different kind of cognitive processing. Because he didn't have the right tool, his brain evaluated the objects around him based on their physical properties rather than their intended labels.
Like, he didn't look at the wood and see scrap kindling.
Right. He looked at the wood and saw a material soft enough to yield to metal, but dense enough to hold it under the friction of a file.
It's lateral thinking in its purest form.
It's the ability to bend the environment to your immediate needs. And it's a skill we often lose when we rely on having a specialized gadget for every minor inconvenience.
And the emotional payoff of bending that environment is just massive. The key is perfectly fitted. The old man is standing there in the workshop, and the text says he is overwhelmed with a mixed feeling of wonder, joy, admiration, thankfulness, and appreciation.
I mean, it's like watching a magic trick save your livelihood.
Truly. And without even hesitating, he reaches for his wallet. He's ready to make what the text calls a, quote, miracle payment.
Miracle payment.
Yeah, he is prepared to pay whatever Vincent asks because Vincent just saved his entire factory's production schedule.
Which is the deeply ingrained response in a transactional society. You provide a highly valuable emergency service, you get compensated heavily for it.
Okay, I have to admit, part of me wants to scream, take the money, Vincent.
I know, right?
He stayed late. He did the impossible. He just saved this guy's entire factory production schedule for the next morning. Why leave that on the table?
It is a totally valid question.
Couldn't he just view the cash as a sign of deep respect for his extreme craftsmanship?
Well, to understand why Vincent says my pleasure and flat out refuses the money, we have to delve into the psychology of motivation.
Okay, lay it on me.
Taking the money changes the internal narrative of the event. We operate on two main types of motivation, extrinsic and intrinsic.
Extrinsic being external rewards.
Right, like cash. Intrinsic is doing something because the act itself or the challenge is inherently satisfying.
So for Vincent, solving the puzzle and helping the man was the actual prize.
Precisely. By refusing the miracle payment, Vincent preserves the purity of the interaction.
Ah, I see.
If he accepts that money at the end, the brain recalculates the entire interaction. In behavioral psychology, this mechanism is often referred to as the overjustification effect.
The overjustification effect.
Yeah, when you introduce a heavy external reward for something a person was intrinsically motivated to do, it can actually decrease their internal satisfaction.
So the narrative in his head would risk shifting from, I'm a craftsman who stepped in to save a fellow human being, down to, I'm just a guy who stayed open late to make a quick buck off a desperate customer.
Exactly. Accepting the money might have actually cheapened the profound sense of self-satisfaction he felt. It elevates the act from a late-night transaction to a legendary feat of craftsmanship.
That completely flips the perspective. Taking the cash might actually taint his own memory of the achievement.
By refusing it, he honors the profound sense of self-satisfaction he felt when that key slid perfectly into the slot.
And it clearly creates a lasting bond that money simply cannot buy.
Oh, definitely.
The source text ends by noting that before leaving, both the old man and the young driver thank him profusely and explicitly state that they will remember him forever.